A 73-year-old man sat alone one evening doing something he'd done thousands of times before, something harmless, even comforting. But this time, it didn't end the same way. That night, he didn't just lose control of his body, he lost a part of himself that would never return. And here's the shocking part. It wasn't because he masturbated, it was because of how he did it and what he didn't know. Yes, masturbation at an older age can quietly destroy the very parts of your health you're trying to protect, unless you understand the truths I'm about to reveal. I'm Dr. James, a men's health specialist with over 30 years of experience guiding seniors through the most sensitive chapters of their lives. I've treated thousands of men over 60, and I've seen firsthand what happens when they're left in the dark about their own sexual health. I don't just speak as a doctor, I speak as a man who has watched his own generation age, suffer in silence, and quietly ask, is this still normal? Am I doing something wrong? The truth: most older men have been masturbating the same way since their 20s, but the body, the brain, and the heart don't work the same way after 60. What once felt like a release can now become a slow drain on your strength, your energy, even your confidence. So why do so few people talk about it? Why do most men carry these habits for decades, never realizing they're quietly paying a price they never agreed to? In this video, I'm going to reveal 5 masturbation secrets that every older man deserves to know, truths that could protect your prostate, strengthen your circulation, and help you stay sexually active, safe, and fulfilled well into your 70s and beyond. These aren't warnings meant to scare you. They're lessons designed to give you back control because knowledge is power, and it's never too late to reclaim it. And stay with me until the end, because the final secret is the one that could make the biggest difference in how long you stay healthy, independent, and sexually capable. You won't hear this from most doctors, but after watching, you'll wish someone told you sooner. Let's begin. Before we dive into these 5 powerful secrets, make sure you've subscribed and tap the bell so you never miss another honest, science-based conversation about your health, intimacy, and independence after 60. And if you're finding this topic important, type 1 in the comments to let me know you're with me. If not, type 0. Your feedback helps me improve what truly matters to you. Now that we've broken the silence and set the stage, let's dive into the 5 masturbation secrets that so many older men wish they had known sooner. Truths that could have saved their confidence, preserved their health, and changed the way they aged forever. Secret 1. Your erection is no longer the whole story, and that's okay. There's a moment in every older man's life when he realizes that his body doesn't respond the way it used to. The blood flow is slower, the sensations are different, and what once felt effortless now requires thought, patience, and often frustration. For many, this moment triggers a quiet panic, an internal voice that whispers, "Something must be wrong with me." But here's the secret no one ever told us. Your erection is no longer the whole story, and that's okay. The truth is, our generation grew up equating sexual success with performance. Hardness meant health. Duration meant power. If you couldn't rise to the occasion, then something was broken, something was failing. But those ideas were planted in our youth, fueled by movies, magazines, and an unrealistic view of masculinity. As we aged, no one updated the manual for us. No one pulled us aside to say, hey, your body is changing, but that doesn't mean you're any less of a man. I've had patients, men in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s, sit across from me with tears in their eyes, convinced that their inability to get a full erection means they've lost their manhood. What they don't realize is that the body is simply transitioning into a new phase, one where the focus shifts from rigidity to connection, from performance to presence. They still crave intimacy, still desire closeness, but they feel lost because they've never been told that orgasm and erection are not the same thing. Yes, you read that right. You can still experience deep, satisfying release even without a full erection. Orgasmic function operates on a separate system, and yet most older men don't know this. They've never been educated about the changes that come with age. They're left alone to interpret these shifts as failure rather than as evolution. Why is this such a well-kept secret? Because our society doesn't talk about aging men's sexuality. We talk about pills and fixes, but not about understanding. Doctors don't bring it up. Families don't ask. And most men are too ashamed to speak about it openly, even with friends. The result? Generations of older men silently battling guilt, confusion, and shame over something that is completely natural. Let me tell you about Charles, a 72-year-old man I worked with not long ago. He came in frustrated, embarrassed, and ready to give up on his sex life altogether. He said, "Doc, it's like the lights are on, but nobody's home." We talked. We unpacked decades of silent assumptions. I explained that pleasure doesn't disappear, it transforms. That with a little patience and self-compassion, he could still enjoy sexual fulfillment, just differently. 2 months later, he told me he was feeling something he hadn't felt in years: hope. That's why this first secret is so critical. When you release the pressure to perform and start exploring what actually feels good, a whole new world opens up. Touch becomes intentional. Time becomes your ally, not your enemy. And intimacy, whether with yourself or a partner, becomes meaningful again. Not measured by hardness, but by presence. Older men need to hear this truth, not just from doctors, but from each other. You're not broken, you're adapting. And that shift is not a death sentence, it's an invitation to rediscover your body in a way you never had time to before. But why don't more men know this? Why aren't we taught that our sexual identity is more than anatomy? Because we live in a culture that praises youth and ignores aging, especially when it comes to male sexuality. And yet the silence is costing us more than we realize. It's time to break that silence for ourselves and for the generations behind us. So if you've been feeling like something's off, I want you to know this. It's not just you, and it's not too late. Your journey doesn't end with age. It begins again with understanding. The erection may no longer be center stage, but what's possible when you let go of that expectation can be even more powerful. And speaking of powerful, what if I told you that masturbation after 60 isn't just about sex, it's about your emotions, your stress, and your mental health? In the next section, I'll share a truth most men never hear. The secret emotional reason why so many seniors still turn to self-pleasure and why ignoring it might quietly be draining your energy day by day. Stay with me. This one will surprise you. Secret 2. Masturbation isn't just sexual, it's emotional and neurological. Most men think masturbation is just about release, a moment of physical pleasure, a private, instinctual act that doesn't go any deeper. But after working with older men for over 3 decades, I've come to understand something far more complex and, honestly, far more important. Masturbation, especially in your 60s, 70s, and beyond, is not just sexual. It's emotional, it's neurological, it's psychological. And the reason most older men don't know this is simple. No one ever told us. No one ever thought we'd still be interested in pleasure, let alone still need it to feel whole. I remember one of my patients, Howard, a retired veteran in his late 70s. He came to me not because he was having trouble physically, but because he felt emotionally flat, numb, disconnected, like he was just going through the motions of life. As we talked, it became clear that masturbation had become something he did not for pleasure, but for peace. It helped him sleep. It calmed his nerves after stressful days. It was, in his words, his reset button. And yet he'd never made that connection. He thought he was just clinging to a habit from his younger years. He never realized that this small private act was actually serving a much bigger purpose: emotional regulation. And he's not alone. Scientific research has shown that many men over 60 use masturbation as a way to manage stress, loneliness, grief, and even fear. It's not just about lust, it's about grounding. It's about reclaiming a sense of control when so much around us feels uncertain. But here's where it gets tricky, because most of us were never taught to look at our emotional lives, let alone how they connect to our sexual habits. We're men. We were raised to man up, to stay tough, to bottle it all in. So when we find ourselves touching ourselves not out of desire, but out of sadness or restlessness, we don't understand what's really happening. And without that understanding, we risk turning something potentially healing into something hollow, or even harmful. That's why this secret matters. Masturbation in older age often becomes a coping mechanism, and when used with awareness, it can be healthy, even therapeutic. But when it's used unconsciously, it can begin to drain you. Not because the act itself is bad, but because you're no longer present during it. You're numbing instead of connecting, and slowly, silently, that can pull the joy and vitality right out of your life. We also need to talk about brain chemistry. After orgasm, your brain releases powerful neurochemicals. oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, all of which influence mood, sleep, motivation, and even memory. That release can be a godsend for seniors struggling with depression or insomnia. But again, it only works if you're aware of what you're doing and why. Too often, older men are stuck in autopilot. The same routine, the same thoughts, the same timing. And the brain starts to go flat. It no longer responds with the same energy because it's not being stimulated in new or meaningful ways. That's why it's so important to shift your mindset. Don't think of masturbation as an act of habit. Think of it as an act of awareness. Ask yourself, am I doing this to connect with myself or to avoid something I don't want to feel? Am I choosing this moment consciously or am I just filling a void? The truth is, no one taught us this level of introspection because men's emotional lives have long been ignored, especially as we age. People assume we stop feeling, that we become emotionless rocks, unmoved and uninterested. But that's never been true. We feel more now than we did when we were younger. We've just gotten better at hiding it. And sometimes the only place we let it out is when we're completely alone. So let this be a call to bring that awareness into the light, to honor the emotional and neurological side of your sexuality, to stop pretending that touch is just touch, because it's not. It's memory, it's emotion, it's survival, and when used wisely, it can also be healing. And now, here's the part that most men never realize, especially those who've been sexually inactive for a long time. While masturbation can soothe the soul, it can also protect the body. In the next section, I'll share a secret that could save your sexual health for years to come. The quiet truth about use it or lose it, and what really happens to the male body when you stop being sexually active after 60. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Secret 3. The use it or lose it rule is real, but misunderstood. There's a hard truth that most older men don't hear until it's too late. When it comes to your sexual function, if you stop using it, you really can lose it. But what almost no one explains is how that happens, or how deeply it can affect not just your sex life, but your entire sense of self. This isn't about fear. It's about understanding the quiet changes that happen inside your body with time and why so many good men find themselves asking, why isn't anything working anymore? When the answer has been hiding in silence for years. As men age, blood vessels naturally narrow. Nerve endings become less responsive, and the tissues in the penis begin to lose their elasticity. These aren't random events. They're biological responses to one simple thing: inactivity. Just like a muscle that shrinks when it's not used, your sexual system also begins to shut down when it's not engaged. And here's the part that breaks my heart. Most older men have no idea this is happening until it's already set in. I've seen it too many times in my practice. A man in his late 60s or 70s finds a new partner after years of being alone. Maybe he's a widower, maybe divorced, maybe he just gave up on intimacy for a while. And now, when he finally feels desire again, he discovers that his body doesn't cooperate. It's not just a little slower, it's different, numb, unresponsive, sometimes even painful. And the worst part, he starts to think something is wrong with him when really it's a perfectly predictable result of long-term disuse. Why aren't men told about this earlier? Why is this basic truth left out of nearly every conversation about aging? Because sexual health after 60 is still treated as optional, as if pleasure, function, and closeness don't matter once your hair turns gray. It's a cruel myth, and it robs thousands of older men of the chance to maintain something that could have remained vibrant with just a little attention over time. Let me tell you about Roy. He was 74 when he came to see me. He hadn't been intimate with anyone for over a decade, not because he didn't want to be, but because life had worn him down. His wife had passed, he got used to solitude, and slowly he stopped touching himself altogether. When he met someone new, he was overjoyed, but confused when his body didn't respond. He tried pills, creams, gadgets. Nothing worked the way he hoped. I gently explained that what he was experiencing wasn't dysfunction, it was disuse. The internal architecture of his penis had slowly atrophied. Blood vessels had narrowed, nerve signals dulled. No one had warned him this could happen. But here's the hopeful part. With time, gentle stimulation, and consistent activity, even just with himself, he began to notice a shift. It wasn't a miracle, it wasn't overnight, but it was real. His body remembered slowly, his confidence returned, and with it his sense of being alive in ways he thought were long gone. This is why masturbation, especially in later years, isn't just about pleasure. It's about maintenance. It keeps blood flowing to delicate tissues. It signals to your body, this still matters. And your body listens. You're not simply keeping a function alive, you're keeping yourself alive in ways that are deeply personal and emotionally grounding. So many men think that if they're not in a relationship, their sexual health isn't worth maintaining. But that's the biggest misunderstanding of all. You don't need a partner to stay sexually vibrant. You just need presence, curiosity, and consistency. And the beautiful truth, that daily or weekly attention may one day allow you to re-enter intimacy with another person fully present and capable, because you never let that part of you die off. Don't wait for a future partner to rediscover your body. Keep that relationship with yourself strong, because the moment you let go of it, the body begins to forget, and the longer it forgets, the harder it is to remember. And there's one more hidden danger I've seen time and again, one that men rarely recognize until it's already weakened their drive, their energy, and even their desire for real intimacy. In the next section, we'll talk about something nearly every man has turned to, especially when they feel alone, but that could be quietly rewiring your brain in the worst possible way. This next secret might be the one costing you more than you realize. Stay with me. Secret 4. Porn may be destroying your sexual reflexes without you knowing it. When you're alone, especially as an older man, it's easy to fall into habits that feel comforting. Late at night, the house is quiet. You reach for what's familiar, your phone, your tablet, maybe your laptop. A few clicks and you're watching a scene that promises quick satisfaction. You don't even think about it. It's automatic. And in the moment, it works. But over time, something strange begins to happen. You notice your arousal fading faster. The climax feels duller. Your real-life interest in intimacy starts to vanish. You don't feel broken, but something feels off. This right here is the hidden cost of a habit that's gone unchecked for far too long. Porn in your older years may be silently destroying your natural sexual reflexes, and most men have absolutely no idea it's happening. This isn't about shame, it's about science. I've seen it again and again. Men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s confused about why they no longer respond to touch the way they used to, why their interest in real women, real moments, has gone flat. They chalk it up to age, hormones, stress. But often the real culprit is overstimulation from decades of porn use. And unlike what we experienced in our younger years, the consequences now go much deeper. You see, your brain has what we call a reward system. It's the part that tells you what to want, what to crave, and what feels good. When you watch high-intensity porn, especially in isolation, your brain gets flooded with dopamine, the pleasure chemical. At first, this feels amazing, but just like any drug, your brain starts adapting. It begins to need more visual input, more novelty, more shock. What used to turn you on now barely registers. Your threshold rises, and as it does, your connection to real human intimacy lowers. What makes this so dangerous for older men is that our brains are no longer as flexible as they once were. The plasticity, the ability to bounce back and form new healthy patterns, slows with age. So if you've been relying on porn for years, especially as your primary source of sexual stimulation, the wiring in your brain becomes rigid. And over time, it stops responding to natural cues, like memory, imagination, or even loving physical touch. This is what I call arousal fatigue, and it's incredibly common among aging men. The worst part? Most don't even suspect it. They think they're losing their sex drive because of age, or medication, or stress. They don't realize it's because their brain has been trained to only respond to intense artificial imagery. And now, it no longer lights up for the real thing. I once had a patient named Ernest, 68 years old, widowed, retired. He started watching porn every night just to feel a sense of closeness to someone, anyone. At first, it brought relief. But after a year, he realized he couldn't feel anything with another person, not even emotionally. It was like he'd built a wall around his senses. He was numb, detached, and deeply frustrated. We worked together to slowly detox from that dependency. It wasn't easy, but within months, he started reconnecting with his own body, not through videos, but through breath, touch, and memory. His senses came alive again. He stopped feeling like a man lost in the past and started living again, fully in the present. And this is the truth that breaks my heart. Most older men simply don't know this is happening. No one warns them. No one talks about how porn affects the aging brain. Instead, they quietly lose connection with their natural pleasure, and they think it's just part of getting old. But it doesn't have to be. You can retrain your mind. You can reset your response system. It begins with stepping away from the screen, even if just for a while. Let your brain rediscover the simple, powerful sensations of your own body. Breathe. Slow down. Touch with presence instead of performance. You may be shocked by what you still feel, by what's still inside you waiting to awaken. And once you break that cycle, something beautiful happens. Your imagination returns, your sensitivity deepens, and your desire for real connection, whether with yourself or someone else, starts to grow again. This isn't about quitting sexuality, it's about reclaiming it from something that's been quietly stealing it from you. But there's one final truth you need to hear. One that ties everything together. Because masturbation, when used with awareness, isn't something to hide or feel ashamed of. In fact, it may be the very thing that supports your health, your mood, even your longevity. In the next and final secret, I'll show you why the act that's been so misunderstood for so long might just be your most powerful tool for aging well. Stay with me, you don't want to miss what's coming. Secret 5. Most doctors won't talk about it, but masturbation can be a lifeline. In all my years working with men over 60, there's one thing I've learned that breaks my heart every time I hear it. I didn't know it was still okay to do that at my age. They say it softly, often looking down with a little shame in their voice, as if they've been caught doing something wrong, something inappropriate, even dangerous. But the truth is exactly the opposite. Masturbation, especially in older men, isn't just okay. It's often one of the healthiest things you can do for yourself, not just for sexual satisfaction, but for your emotional balance, your physical health, and even your dignity. The sad part is, most older men never hear this. And the reason? Most doctors won't talk about it. Why? Because we're trained to focus on what's wrong, not on what keeps you whole. We're taught to talk about medications, symptoms, surgeries, not about pleasure, connection, or identity, and especially not about the quiet, private habits that help keep a man grounded. That kind of conversation is left out of most medical rooms, and as a result, millions of men are left wondering in silence if the things they're still doing or wishing they could do are somehow shameful or risky, and that silence becomes the real danger. Let's set the record straight. Masturbation, when done with awareness and intention, offers real, measurable health benefits for older men. It promotes circulation in the pelvic region, which helps maintain tissue health. It supports prostate function by allowing the body to clear out old fluids. It improves sleep by releasing calming neurochemicals like oxytocin and serotonin. It even boosts mood and helps fight loneliness, something too many seniors quietly suffer with. But it's more than biology. It's also about identity. When a man loses touch with his sexuality, especially in later years, he often loses touch with a deeper part of himself. He starts to feel invisible, not just to others, but to himself. He stops seeing himself as someone who still deserves pleasure, still has desire, still matters in that deeply human way. And slowly, his world starts to shrink. He becomes not just older, but smaller, emotionally. I've seen this happen far too many times. One man I worked with, his name was Walter, hadn't been touched even by himself in nearly 6 years. After his wife passed, he told himself that part of his life was over, that it wouldn't be appropriate to seek pleasure alone, that maybe it wasn't even healthy. But over time, his mood darkened. He stopped sleeping well. He became easily agitated. It wasn't until we talked, really talked, that he began to understand the role that sexual touch played in his emotional well-being. I remember the moment he looked at me and said, "I didn't know I was allowed to still be a man." That sentence has stayed with me ever since. The truth is, so many older men have internalized the idea that sex, especially solo sex, is for the young, that after a certain age it's childish or dirty or unnecessary. But that belief is deeply harmful, because the need for touch, release, and intimacy doesn't disappear with age. It simply changes form. And if we honor those changes, if we approach them with curiosity and care, we don't lose ourselves. We actually return to ourselves in a way that's often deeper and more meaningful than ever before. So why don't more doctors tell you this? Because many of them are uncomfortable. Because they weren't trained in how to talk about aging and sexuality with dignity. Because they worry it will open a door they don't know how to walk through. and because they assume wrongly that you don't want to talk about it either. But I promise you, you're not alone. Thousands of older men are asking the same questions, feeling the same uncertainty, holding the same fears. And I'm here to tell you, it's not too late. You are still allowed to feel. You are still allowed to want. You are still allowed to touch your body with kindness and care. Masturbation is not a failure of connection. It can be a form of it. A bridge between your physical body and your emotional needs. A way of saying to yourself, I still matter. So if you've been carrying silent doubts, wondering if your habits are strange or dangerous or shameful, I want you to let them go. What you do in your private space with presence and respect for yourself is not only healthy, it's healing. And in a world that often forgets older men, it may be one of the most important forms of self-respect you have left. Because at the end of the day, masturbation isn't the problem. Silence is. And once that silence is broken, you begin to reclaim parts of yourself that were never lost, just waiting to be remembered. You've made it through all 5 secrets. But there's one more thing I want to leave you with, something that ties all of this together into one simple, powerful truth. Stay with me for the conclusion. It could change the way you look at aging and yourself forever. Conclusion: 5 masturbation secrets old men wish they knew sooner. If you've made it this far, I want to say something from the heart. Thank you. Thank you for staying open, for staying curious, for being willing to look at something most men your age were never taught to talk about. That alone puts you in a rare group of men who are not giving up, not backing down, and not letting silence define how they live the final chapters of their lives. We began this journey by challenging a belief that many older men carry without even realizing it. That their sexuality fades, that their desire must vanish, and that masturbation is somehow no longer appropriate after 60 or 70. But what we've uncovered together is something far more honest and powerful. First, we learned that erections may change, but pleasure does not have to disappear. Your body isn't failing, it's evolving. Then we explored the emotional layers that live beneath the surface of self-touch, the anxiety, the loneliness, the search for comfort, and how most men never realize that what they're doing isn't just physical, it's deeply emotional and neurological. From there, we uncovered the truth about disuse, that when you stop using your sexual function, your body gradually forgets how to respond. It's not age alone, it's inactivity that causes the most damage. And when we touched on the dangers of overusing pornography, we revealed how overstimulation can rewire the brain and distance you from natural, meaningful arousal, something many men feel but rarely understand. And finally, we talked about the one thing most doctors never say, that masturbation in later life can be a lifeline, not just for your body, but for your confidence, your identity, and your well-being. These 5 truths are not just pieces of advice, they are invitations. Invitations to return to your body with kindness, to stop judging your changes, to stop waiting for permission to feel again. You don't need to be in a relationship. You don't need to perform like you did at 25. You only need to be willing to listen to yourself, to the signals your body still gives you, to the quiet moments of aliveness that are still yours to experience. I don't say this as a doctor today. I say this as a man who has walked beside hundreds of others like you. Men who feared they were broken only to discover they were simply uninformed. Men who thought it was too late only to realize that the truth came just in time. You are not too old. You are not out of time. You are not done. You still have access to connection, to pleasure, and to healing if you're willing to reach for it. So whatever your age, whatever your story, I hope you leave this video with one clear message. Your body may age, but your right to feel, to touch, to be whole, that never expires.